This is a video of the Hozelock auto retracting garden hose, and I'm just this is to explain how the retract mechanism works, because I'm looking at it and repairing something. So I've taken the central spindle out that goes in there and locates, I don't know whether you can see, there's a lip on the coil spring inside, and that engages in that slot here. And so when the reel turns, and this is anchored, if you can see the screw holes there, A, B, C, D, this is anchored to the case over here, and the case and the other half of the case on the bottom down here, they're both all screwed together. So that means that the coil spring is secure, and when the hose is pulled out, then the spring is held in place and begins to coil up to give you the retract. So the problem I've had is this piece here is called the Raceway Lever, and it has a spring-loaded peg here, and there is the spring, and the spring goes in there, in that hole, and then this peg goes in like that and pushes in. These two little lugs that you can see engage in slots inside, which is not very easy to see, and so it just moves up and down. So the purpose of this Raceway lever, shall move that out of the way for a moment, just use a peg to demonstrate. The purpose of the Raceway lever is, so there's a hose, so if you're, say, pulling the hose off, the reel will go clockwise, and I better just show you how the Raceway lever attaches to, this is the casing here that goes on the top of this part of the drum. And the Raceway lever goes into this hole here, and see this has 4 lugs on it which push into that hole there and snap in very firmly. And so the Raceway lever, as the drum is being unwound and wound again, oscillates backwards and forwards, and you'll see why in a minute, like that. Okay, with that peg, this side, that peg coming out of there. So the purpose of the peg and the Raceway lever, the peg, spring-loaded, runs in this, either of these slots. There's quite a lot of them. So if going back to uncoiling the hose, if the hose is uncoiled, so the drum will go in a clockwise direction, we'll simulate that the peg here will go in the other direction. So we simulate the peg will go around here, and you will hear it clicking like that. Like so. So when you pulled enough hose out, we'll keep going around clicking a bit, like that. So say you come to here, and you've had enough, and you let go of the hose, so you've got enough, you've pulled enough hose out. What will happen is the spring will pull the drum anti-clockwise, and so this peg here will go clockwise, so it goes into there, like that. I'll do that again because you didn't see properly. Okay, so this will go anti-clockwise, and it will go into there and stay in place, like that. So it will stop the drum rewinding, so you've got enough hose. So when you want some more hose out, you'll pull, the drum will go clockwise, and so this peg will go anti-clockwise, and what will happen is it will run down there into this track like this, and you'll keep pulling hose out, and then the peg will find its way back onto the outer track, which is the one it runs in when the hose is being pulled out. Okay, so that's pulling the hose up. So now retracting the hose, what happens is, so we'll say we've got to that point and it's there. So retracting the hose, what happens then is that you give a slight tug on the hose as if you were going to pull more hose out, and then, so what happens then, so that goes clockwise and this goes anti-clockwise like that, the peg that is, and then you let go of the hose slowly, and so the drum rotates in an anti-clockwise direction, and this peg is now in the inner groove. So the drum is retracting, it goes in anti-clockwise direction, the peg goes in a clockwise direction. So this is what happens to it. It goes around here like this, and it stays in this track, and you hear it clicking every now and then, which is what happens here because there's a lip there. Okay, so the peg goes over the lip, and this is why you hear a click every time the drum rotates when the reel is retracting like this. This is what you hear. Sounds slightly different when the drums all and the case is all screwed together. So that's what happens, and that is how the retract mechanism works. And of course the coil spring inside, which as more and more hose is pulled out gets tighter and tighter, it then has enough stored energy that when the hose has to be retracted, it's strong enough to pull the drum back round again and rewind the hose onto a drum like that. So that's how it works. And the problem I found is that, if I get the spring again, if I can find it, the problem I found when I came to investigate why this particular reel wasn't retracting was that this Raceway Lever peg and spring had come out of that slot, and what out of that slot. And what I have found, or out of that hole I should say, what I have found now is, well, I can show you with one hand, is that I am going to reassemble this now, but I can show you with one hand. There's quite a lot of play. The size of the hole and the size of the peg, there's quite a lot of play. Whether that's from wear, because the reel is quite old, or whether it's been designed that way, I don't know. Inside the hole, there are some grooves which are designed to take up that play, but in this case they aren't quite enough, and I'm not entirely happy with the amount of play there is, because if you can imagine, with that peg on the bottom, when the Raceway Lever is going down and rotating around those grooves, and they go into each of these slots, and then it retracts like that, there's going to be wobble and play in that lever. So I think that's probably why it came out, or it possibly hit one of these stops a bit too hard and just went to the side and came out for some reason. So what I'm going to do, what I'm planning to try, is to beef that spring up a bit and just make it a bit stronger so that the peg is pressed a bit harder into these slots, and we'll see if that works. And I have greased it as well, or I do grease it, and that helps it just run up and down. And the track generally I don't grease, because A, it'll pick up dirt, and B, and dust, and B, it doesn't really need it. It is quite a slippy plastic anyway, and so is the Raceway Lever and peg. So it shouldn't be necessary to grease that, but where the knob runs up and down inside this hole, I usually put a little bit of grease in there just to help. Okay.